Welcome to another episode of Steven Study with your host here, Steven. And for those of you that are returning, appreciate your time. For those of you that are new, I am Steven. You can follow me on Twitter or YouTube at Steven, STEPHEN PG3. We're here to talk a little bit of Ryan Dunn if you allow a couple of minutes of your time to me. And before we get to that, actually make sure you also like this video and subscribe to the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. Now let's get to the film. All right, so as we spoke to, we're going to be speaking on solely Ryan Dunn in this podcast, this episode of Steven Studies. And we're going to be looking specifically at his multiple efforts and look at those multiple efforts in multiple contexts. And it's the way that he sustains his level of competition, his competition bar, his motor, if you will. He has all of those defensive intangibles, as well as the tangibles in terms of his physical athleticism and abilities. And that's a lot of what we're going to be breaking down in this film session. So this first rep here, we're going to be looking at I think this was his very first possession after he checked into the game, actually. So we're going to be looking at Ryan. Let me pull up the cursor so you can see exactly where he is. Ryan is going to be right here in this area. So keep an eye on him as play breaks down. And then we'll kind of slow it down and show you what's going on. So get the inbound pass from the Rockets. Get a little action going on that strong side over there with Şengün. And then you see also Iguodala rotating over to trap the box to keep him from being able to turn the corner on that baseline. And they do a great job of trapping him so well that he can't even get to the box on the court. They get that stop before he gets to the free throw line, box him in using the sideline as an additional, or the baseline rather, as an additional defender. Also make him terminate his dribble. And then with also being the athlete that he is, he's also able to add size to taking away some of the vision and passing lanes from Alfred Şengün. In tandem with that, on the string defensively with that, as also leaves his man Steven Adams to trap the box. Look at Ryan Dunn rotating off of Cam Whitmore, who's here in the corner. Not the best three-point shooter, not considered a shooter on the Suns scouting report. Knows that he can comfortably leave him and be early peeled in to help the helper. This is basically a help the helper scenario on defense. Got them trapping the box here. Someone leaves someone. That means someone has to be peeled in to help the helper. Ryan Dunn is on time and on schedule with that rotation. And then we're going to watch his multiple efforts as he also then rotates back out of that. So he talked about Cam Whitmore on the scouting report. Not looked at as a shooter. He can shoot, but he's not looked at as a shooter. So the closeout for Ryan Dunn, where if it was, say, Klay Thompson or Steph Curry, or he's running them off the three-point line, or even just stamping his foot on the three-point line, he's stopping a foot short of that, but also remaining directional and still trying to keep him from getting towards the middle of the floor with this closeout. And watch how well Ryan Dunn does with this closeout, getting to a weight distribution to where he's on balance with the closeout so that he can not just close out, but also be able to recover. The toughest rotation to make in basketball. And he's doing that against a younger athletic guard. Takes away that middle, knowing that he should have help coming in the form of help at the box, like we just got done speaking to on Alfred Şengün on the opposite side of the court. The Suns do a solid job with that. You want to see them pinch it a little bit more so that this double team on the box can't be split in a sense, but the help is there, and that's just enough for Ryan Dunn to make this multiple effort sequence essentially capped off with his extra efforts at the end to get the block, and the Suns are off to the races on the other side of the court. Just one instance of things that we have not seen consistently or often from the Suns in terms of their individual efforts. You put that in tandem with any scheme, the scheme being to try to get the ball out of Alfred Şengün's hands when he put the ball in the deck. You need the help defense to be on time and also able to rotate out of that. And we saw all of the multiple efforts that he compiled on that singular rep in and of itself. And then on this rep here, we're going to be looking at him again as the low man. So find the cursor and bring it to you so you see exactly where I'm looking. So you got all of this stuff happening on the strong side. And then the low man here on the opposite side, lowest man closest to the basket on the weak side of the floor is Ryan Dunn. Again, tasked with guarding Cam Whitmore again. So you got that part of the way. You're going to let action unfold on the strong side, but make sure you keep your eye on Ryan Dunn as he makes his rotations. There's going to be a lot of little things with him here. So he's peeled in early. Again, we talked about Cam Whitmore not being respected as a true shooter, a person that can shoot, but not a true shooter. And Ryan Dunn is timing up his help in respect to that, in respect and alignment with the scouting report as well. So does a good job being peeled in early. And this is not going to be a crazy, oh my God, type of defensive rep where he's just being a wrecking ball with defensive chaos, but this is just him being sharp to the game plan, but also being sharp with his help. And the best way to be impactful as a help defender is to be early as often as you can. You see this skip to the second side. You see that Royce O'Neal's in a little bit of rotation here. But watch that subtle jab back that just makes the decision-making of Alfred Sengun stagnate just enough to where it terminates his dribble. Job well done. You get the ball out of their best player's hands, force it to the backside. Suns get a stop. That help defense is not something that we've seen consistently from the Suns. Driving lanes have been aplenty for any player, especially best players on opposing teams. And to see someone be able to take that away in addition to what we saw in the first rep, very important. And naturally, by this point, you picked up on Ryan Dunn's neon green shoes. You can kind of spot him in the crowd. Nonetheless, we bring the cursor back in so that you can see exactly where he is. And you can kind of follow him as the play kind of develops here. All right, so we got a little bit of an isolation with Sengun, getting a little bit of an elbow extended touch. Ryan Dunn's on the second side. He navigates the screen and watched another disciplined closeout, doing a good job not getting too close to where he's conceding the drive, staying on balance in terms of his weight distribution, but also trying to continue to funnel players to specific pockets of the court. Now he's going to have his leverage kind of be played with just a little bit there, but again, you see a solid contest, and that's the other big thing about defense. I had the pleasure of talking a little bit of defense with Chris Finch at the All-Star break last season, and he talked about a lot of things on defense being essentially cute, but the main thing, the mainstay, the most effective thing is being able to get up an effective contest. We see just that there from Ryan Dunn, and that's one of his many strengths that he's consistent with on defense. And we'll have another player too that highlights that as much as this one did. And as you see naturally with this one, it's going to be a sequence that starts with Ryan Dunn getting a stop, but then him also playing to the Suns' principles in terms of pressure counters, and then knocking down the shots that are made for him within the flow of the offense. Devin Booker getting top blocked by Jeff Green, pitches it to Oso Ighodaro so he can get into an uphill dribble handoff with Devin Booker. That unlocks him getting downhill. Now we're going to see the Suns playing flow. And this is when the Suns are at their best. They're able to have the pressure that they're being conceded from a defense flipped into an advantage, but they don't lose their flow on offense or their rhythm. Devin Booker gets downhill off of the handoff with Oso, engages the opposing center, who's obviously Steven Adams here. Quick dump off to Oso that pulls in the low man, Alfred Sengun, and now the Suns have the Rockets rotating. And that's exactly where you want to be. You want to get the defense rotating, but you have to take advantage of having them rotating by having your ball movement be faster than their rotations. And we see just that here. You get roll, skip, and then a +1 to Ryan Dunn, space above the break. A lot of conversations about those boxes on the court for the Suns in terms of spacing principles and spacing templates for Budenholzer. The Suns absolutely nailed that in addition to their flow to get downhill and to generate the advantage that they did. Advantage Suns. Ryan Dunn caps off the sequence, knocking down an above the break three-pointer. These reps are extremely invaluable for a player like Ryan Dunn. And then you already know what time it is. We're going to be picking him up, guarding Jalen Green this time. Get a little bit of a step-up screen here in the empty corner. And we're going to be seeing a switch be triggered, taking place here between him and I believe that's Royce O'Neal. And as we take the cursor away, we kind of dive into it a little bit more. So you see the switch that takes place. And now we're going to be paying close attention to Ryan Dunn because now he's guarding Alfred Sengun in the post. Does a good job not conceding too much leverage, but also not doing too much to foul. Now he's tasked with knowing that he has a flood rotation coming from the strong side block. That's going to be Mason Plumlee, the lowest defender here, stepping over the help line being the line that splits the court literally in half from baseline to baseline. You see Plumlee stepping over the flood, the strong side block, flood being creating an overload for the defense to try to shrink the floor on the ball handler. And watch how the Suns defend out of that, but watch how Ryan Dunn does his job within the defensive scheme. End up passing it back out. And now the job's not done once the ball gets passed out of that double team. And that's an area that the Suns have struggled with defensively this season. Watch how Ryan Dunn goes from obviously being tasked with guarding the best player on the opposing team to not just conceding this driving lane, which would allow for them to take a one-on-one angle directly towards Mason Plumlee, who's being engaged in the post by Steven Adams. Ryan Dunn and his defensive instincts take place here. Steps over with help just to get another jab at on the ball handler that's trying to drive this closeout, and watch the result that it gets for the Suns and how it's advantageous for them in terms of their defensive shell. Forces the terminated dribble, converges with 3 bodies on 1 person with the basketball from the Rockets, ends up going back out to Alfred Şengün. He's a player that's skilled, but he's not going to be able to drive past someone like Ryan Dunn in this type of context of offense. He's a little far away from home in that respect. And because of that, Ryan Dunn, another disciplined closeout, crowds up the airspace as they get late into the shot clock, concedes 0 leverage, and he's just staying solid. Not doing too much, not reaching, not getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar, if you will. Just stays solid defensively. And then we're going to see him ultimately, again, walling up. And because he's just solid defensively, keeps other players from being engaged in terms of help. And that's when you're at your best, because now you can get opportunities when 50-50 scenarios arise like this one. Şengün loses the ball. Royce O'Neal is able to just grab and go instead of having to go from help to now a kick out and now having to close out to another shooter. Job well done from the Suns. They get another stop there. Pick up on Ryan Dunn again. This time he's guarding Jalen Green. Secondary break a little bit right here. No true action happening. We're going to see a little bit of a screen kind of come into the play, but it's essentially going to be isolation. Watch how Ryan Dunn is initially directional with his defensive coverage here, trying to keep Jalen Green from getting towards the middle of the floor here. Does a good job with that, not just conceding the driving lane, but trying to influence. There's a distinct difference between those two things. He's doing a good job of influencing him to a pocket of the court where he knows that he can be successful, but that's also aligned with the defensive scheme. Ends up forcing him to reject the screen, and now he's just defending one-on-one in space, and he's got to guard his yard. Keeps the help from being engaged. He's able to get up again, a solid contest. Suns get a stop. And now this one's going to happen in transition. He started this play behind the ball. And if you didn't pick up on where he is, I'll bring the cursor in so you can see exactly where he's coming from here. He started this play as the closest player to the opposite baseline of where play is headed at in terms of the direction of the ball. And watch how he competes to get back into space, and then we'll kind of break down what's happening from there after that. These are the multiple efforts, the efforts that we have not seen from the Suns consistently over these last handful of weeks, if not last handful of months, quite honestly, since he exited the rotation. We see the ball get back over into the corner to Fred VanVleet, and then we're going to watch him just do a solid job of containing and ultimately getting into a late switch scenario here with Bol in the corner. Gets switched on to Jock Landale, and it's the little things in terms of the details. Watch how he sinks back into the body of Landale as he gets into this post-up. I talked about the late switch scenario that took place where the Suns would have conceded this advantage to Jock Landale on a post mismatch. Watch his multiple efforts in competing to take away the angle. Ultimately keeps Jock Landale from getting the ball. And as we mentioned, with the multiple efforts, the job is not done there. As he gets him engaged on the box out, just enough to put him out of position of grabbing that rebound. And those are the little things that add up in favor of you when you play defense to a certain level in terms of your energy that you're exerting. And now, don't need this highlighter on highlighter in terms of shoes. You don't need the cursor for this one. He's picking up Jalen Green full court, something the Suns have sorely missed. They need that ball pressure, someone dictating terms and steering the wheel for their defensive possessions. You see him do a good job here navigating the screen. Does get hit a little bit, but it's the multiple efforts to compete back into things. Ends up being another late switch here with Kevin Durant. But again, these are the multiple efforts because the job is not done. He switched on to Jock Landale. Watch this rotation that he makes to wall up at the rim. This is rim protection, not always going for block shots, but being able to establish verticality with a 2-foot jump. Being disciplined to not foul. And you see what that results in for the Suns. You have to have size to do that. You have to have athleticism, but you also have to have the mental side of that down pat as well. And that's being able to be ahead of anticipating where things are going to be going in terms of action around you. Another job well done from Ryan Dunn, being on schedule with his defensive instincts, and another defensive playmaking rep for him. And a long list of that, as you can see here from this film session from last night's game against the Houston Rockets. You're going to pick up on him again. He's guarding in the corner right here. You see the quick jab at just to make sure that there's no pass that's taking place that's going to be going to Fred VanVleet as he cuts to the basket. And now watch the multiple efforts on this rotation out. Another disciplined closeout. Gets attached to the hip, not to the point of fouling, but enough to the physical legal limit, which you heard Monty Williams preach ad nauseum when he was here with the Phoenix Suns. and watch him do a good job getting back to be able to steer the wheel a little bit defensively and what that results in for him. Now he gets some help on that attempt to trap the box again. It's not as effective as you would desire, but this is where your multiple efforts and your defensive instinct really shine through if you're Ryan Dunn. And this is where this would have been a layup against the Suns over the last handful of weeks where he hasn't been consistently in the rotation. But because he is in there, you get those multiple efforts, especially because this is his third shift over the course of this game. He's in tune with the game. He's not thinking about the other things. He's just focused on playing off of instinct, and that's the space that he has to be in if he's at his best defensively. And that's it with Ryan Dunn. I appreciate your time. Hopefully you see the values that he brings to this team that are unique from anybody else on the roster this season, and why he should firmly be in the Suns rotation through the rest of this season. Appreciate your time. Talk to y'all soon.